Good morning, everyone. I would like to call to order this public roundtable of the Committee on the Judiciary and Public Safety. I'm Councilmember Brooke Pinto, representing Ward 2 and chairwoman of the committee. The time is 10:26 a.m. on Wednesday, February 11th, 2026, and we're conducting this public roundtable in person in room 120 of the John A. Wilson Building and virtually over Zoom and streaming on the DC Council's website and YouTube and X at @CM Brooke Pinto. On the agenda today, we have a confirmation resolution first for the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner, or OCME. I also want to note that immediately following this public roundtable, we're then going to transition into a public hearing to conduct performance oversight for two agencies under our purview today, the Department of Forensic Science and the Office of Deputy Mayor for Public Safety and Justice. Turning first to our public roundtable, proposed resolution 26-0404 nominates Dr. Francisco J. Diaz for reappointment as the Chief Medical Examiner for the Office of Chief Medical Examiner for a term to end on April 30th, 2031. As a reminder, OCME is an important part of our public safety ecosystem. The agency investigates all deaths in the district that occur as a result of violence, as well as those that occur unexpectedly without medical attention, in custody, or pose a threat to public health. OCME provides forensic services to government agencies, healthcare providers, and citizens of the DC metropolitan area to ensure that justice is served and improve the health and safety of the public. The fatality review committees that OCME oversees are responsible for reviewing the circumstances of the deaths of individuals within certain populations, including their interaction with DC government services. Those review committees then provide analysis and recommendations to the public and district entities serving the defined populations so they can address systemic problems and so that we all can provide better services. Dr. Diaz currently serves as the Chief Medical Examiner at OCME, a position he has held since June 2021, in addition to serving as the interim director of DFS. With degrees in medicine from the Technology Institute of Santo Domingo and anatomic pathology training at the Kanema Memorial Medical Center in Pennsylvania, Dr. Diaz possesses an impressive record of serving in clinical, academic, administrative, advisory, and leadership positions in DC and around the country. He is currently licensed in Michigan, Pennsylvania, Ohio, DC, and the Dominican Republic, and is certified in anatomic pathology and forensic pathology. Dr. Diaz has led OCME extremely well and has served as a key partner in all of our public safety work. I remain very grateful to him and OCME and all of our agencies in our public safety cluster for working together in response to the devastating mid-air collision that occurred last year on January 29th over the Potomac River. The dedication of every agency staff during this challenging incident demonstrated the crucial role that each agency plays in our public safety infrastructure. The response involved coordination across numerous agencies, including OCME, MPD, Fire and EMS, Virginia and Maryland Emergency Services, and our federal partners, highlighting the complexity of managing large-scale emergency incidents in our unique jurisdiction. OCME had the particular difficult work of responding to these mass fatalities. My questions for today's nominee roundtable are less oriented on Dr. Diaz's background and more towards the future. I want to hear about the vision for this office, the challenges he's faced to inform the current perspective, and learn more about how you plan to ensure that OCME continues to fulfill its functional mission in the Chief Medical Examiner role. We do not have any public witnesses for today's hearing, so we're going to call Dr. Diaz up. Welcome again, sir. And as you know, it is our tradition to swear in all government witnesses who appear before us. So if you can turn your microphone on and raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm under penalty of law that the testimony you're about to provide before the Council of the District of Columbia and this committee is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you so much. I'd now like to invite you to give any opening statement you may have.
Thank you. Madam Chairwoman, if you allow me, rather than reading, you already spell out my background. This is my 32nd year in pathology in the United States. In order to be a forensic pathologist, one has to become an anatomic pathology first, And as you stated, I trained at Memorial Medical Center in Johnstown, Pennsylvania, for 4 years. Then I did forensics for 2 years in the City and County of Philadelphia Medical Examiner's Office. And after that, I worked 16 years in Detroit, Michigan as a medical examiner. And this will be my 9th year in the District of Columbia, half of which as Deputy Medical Examiner and Medical Director, as well as Chief Medical Examiner since January of the year 2021. And basically that's my background. As you stated, I still have licenses in Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and of course the District of Columbia. And I have a faculty appointment now with George Washington University Hospital. And we do have a fellowship training in forensic pathology. So pathologists can train in Washington, D.C. to become forensic pathologists the way I did it 3 decades ago.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Diaz, for your continuing service and for your effort to lead this agency. I have no doubts or questions about your expertise, and in fact, think that we in the District of Columbia are extremely lucky to have you. And so thank you. I know this is intense work, and it is such important work. And so really appreciate your service. And because you have such a robust set of experiences and perspectives, both in DC and outside of DC, how do you think about the future of OCME to ensure that we're better understanding the trends that you've seen over the last couple of years and equipping the agency to be successful?
Yes, the work of a medical examiner's office is a complicated one. And people from the outside may think that it's only autopsies and certifying the death, but there is a very complex choreography. First of all, to make adjudication as to which death belongs in the jurisdiction and which ones do not belong in the jurisdiction. And for that, the medical examiner needs a very robust medical legal death investigation system. It needs a really deep bench in terms of performing autopsies, autopsy technicians, a transportation team, and we have the luxury in the district to have a full-fledged postmortem toxicology laboratory. And that allows us to provide all the data as to how and why people died, especially since the last decade, we have been confronted in the United States with an increase in the number of drug-related deaths. So my advocacy, and one of the reasons we are lucky to be in the district understood years ago about the importance of a medical examiner. I used to say that medical examiner coroners are usually treated in a way like Cinderella because not a lot of resources are allocated. Because what we do is not seen, like for example, in other departments that you can show a building that you build. And to that end, we are well-staffed and well-funded, and that funding and that human resources are of paramount importance for the efficiency of a medical examiner system.
Thank you. And as we look at some of the trends that we're seeing, I'm very alarmed by the numbers around the proportion of deaths of our young people attributable to gun violence. And so as you have analyzed those cases, are there any recommendations that OCME has around trying to turn those numbers around?
Intervention in terms of the communities being involved, the government as well. The district had a program of violence interruption. Those are the type of jobs that are very the term escapes me, but ungrateful because it's a grind working every day. But one death that you are able to avoid is the effort is worth it. So I would encourage, because as you heard from my background, I used to work in Philadelphia that averaged 500, 450 homicides in any given year. Detroit had the same. And to my memory, and I could be wrong, there were no defined programs to try to reduce that violence, where DC has those programs. But that is with years that you see the results. It's not instantaneous. We've seen some of which, some of that results nowadays. For example, in January, we have only one homicide, and thus far in February, another homicide. And if memory serves me well, they are domestic altercation. That's not a justification, but it's different than random homicides. So we are hopeful that 2026, it will show a significant decrease as compared to 2024, 2023, 2022. When I came to the district in 2017, there were 115 homicides. And if the trend continues, hopefully we can have a very reduced number this year. And but I think those programs should continue regardless, because it's the active involvement with the communities that make a difference, in my opinion, from what I have observed in the last 3 decades.
Thank you for that. And agreed. Are there any things that you're seeing around the specificity of gun wounds? Like, one of the things that we've been tracking on the MPD data side is, especially in these winter months, there have been far fewer homicides over the last year, but we've found that more of them are happening inside than
Yes.
were happening outside. And so is there anything around the location of the body or the proximity of the shot that's notable?
No, that is an excellent observation. They're happening inside. And a lot of them arise from disputes and inability for conflict resolution. But one thing that I noticed that has decreased 3 years ago, I noticed, and coming from the Midwest, cities like Detroit, they have vast majority of homicides are due to multiple gunshot wounds. When I say multiple, 10, 15, 20, that's the so-called drive-by shooting. If you look at the map of southeastern Michigan, it makes sense. If you're in a vehicle, you really can get out really quick. So it would make sense to shoot somebody from a vehicle, and then you're out of there before you could say what happened here. The district is rather convoluted in its geography. But we were noticing people with multiple gunshot wounds, like drive-by shootings. And the question is, how can they get out when people like myself, I tend to get lost here in the district easily. So but that's a trend that diminished in 2024 and then 2025. So the question arose to myself, why we have that? What type of weapons were they bringing here? Those are high power weapons. How they were getting out of the city, because the region is similar. If you go to Prince George's County, it's also a difficult geography to navigate, and Northern Virginia as well. But that has decreased, and as you aptly stated, the cases we've seen are happening in the inside. And I think other than domestic altercations, couples, it's also inability for conflict resolution.
Thank you for that. We have seen over the last several years a nationwide shortage for medical examiners and forensic pathologists. I know you have been working hard to think outside the box of developing other internship programs and building out the pipeline. How are some of those efforts going? And how do you envision the next couple of years to try to build up the workforce in this field that is very important, and we need to have excellent staff?
Yes. The latest census from the National Association of Medical Examiners, there are approximately 700 board-certified forensic pathologists between the United States and Canada. The need will approximate like double, a little bit more than double that. It is a lift. It's not easy to convince medical students to go into forensic pathology for various reasons. One of them is there is no positive feedback. Nobody's going to tell you, great job you did in the autopsy of my loved one. Nobody. Where if you work hard in the emergency room, you work really hard, but at the end you have the satisfaction that you save a life. So there is a psychological component of why people choose medicine in general, not only medical school, nursing, and so on, because there is that satisfaction that you don't get. And you're also completely dependent on the judicial system. If I have to testify today, just to give you an example, I cannot say no. So I will not be able to attend the hearing today because there are consequences if you are subpoena. So that's another thing that doesn't motivate. Another one is medical students have huge debts when they finish in the United States, approximately 300,000 on average. That's another one. But the National Association of Medical Examiners is trying to encourage medical students and to sponsor students and pathologists to reach forensic pathology. And that's the reason we have an accredited program to train pathologists into forensic pathology. You know, the average age of a forensic pathologist in the United States is 65. That's the average. We have now, the last year, more younger people, but it takes from medical school you finish, then it requires 4 or 5 years of training in pathology, another year or two of forensic pathology. So that's, if you finish medical school and your interest is forensic pathology, that's another 7 years of training, or 6 on average. So, medicine is a marathon. It's not, but I think we're making progress as the specialty overall.
Are there other things that we can be helpful with in making the job less thankless? Like I'm thinking of, we talk to OUC all the time about the fact that they are first responders on the front line and in going into high schools and other job fairs around DC, making sure that people applying know that they are really part of the public safety ecosystem. Like with OCME and thinking about funeral services or kind of expanding the social supports that we're also providing to families in their time of need. Like, are there other ways that we can be trying to build out the type of applicant who may be interested in going into this role?
No doubt. One of the things that might be helpful will be access to mental health. And I'm not saying, and we talked about it before, it's like what we sustain is what is called vicarious trauma. It's the trauma that you see every day, that sometimes it doesn't manifest, but it does. Obviously, mental health access also is limited because there's not enough personnel to take care of it. Again, and I will mention the National Association of Medical Examiners, they're very active into what is called wellness for the medical examiner, medical legal death investigators, and so on. But, where are the resources? Where are you going to go? And, in this 30-year journey that I have in forensic pathology, I have to tell you that things didn't affect me in terms, I was able to compartmentalize. I love being a forensic pathologist. I love doing autopsies. So just to give you an example, when I was in Detroit in the last years, in conjunction with the federal government, we raided a warehouse in Detroit and we found 1,200 heads. And I thought it was one of the most fascinating cases. That didn't affect me. However, the Mid-Air Coalition did in ways that I didn't think it would have, but it did. So what do I do? How do I cope with it? Do you talk about it? At one point you stop talking about it? And that's something that mental health professionals can help. The same, our colleagues from fire and EMS that assisted in the recovery of remains from the Potomac all the way from January 29 all the way until May. That's like how many days of diving into the river? They are affected as well. even more so than personnel that work in the medical examiner's office. So that's something that as an older practitioner, we were not trained that way, but I see how it can come up. Where younger personnel, the medical examiners that work with me, they are on average like 37 years old. They are very akin to those type of things. They know when to take a mental health day. They know when things may overwhelm them or not. But we need access to those resources. We used to have the One Center, and not only for, you know, uh, if you could say, well, this is what I have chosen as a career. So tough luck, that's what you chose. But there's personnel in my office that came to work in what they do just by serendipity. For example, the identification unit, it's clerical, but they deal with the families at the worst moment, and, grieving is difficult. Sometimes anger comes out. They get insulted. The families don't mean it, but they are grieving. So how that personnel copes with that. So it's not only for the medical examiners, it's for everybody that works in a medical examiner setting, that at some point it becomes too much emotionally.
Yeah, absolutely. I can see that. And what is the status of the vicarious trauma unit that you all established?
We have that unit and we have different programs to cope with it. My goal, and you said about the future, before I left the district, I would love to have a full-time access to various areas of mental health assistance. And I'm not saying a psychiatrist, I'm saying different programs that will help individuals to cope. Not every day is the same. If you work in a medical examiner setting. And some days you are okay, and some days things may affect people in different ways. And as I said, the One Center used to have fabulous programs, but mental health is having the same issue as forensic pathology. There are not enough practitioners and a lot of demand for their services. But I would love to have a dedicated program that, not only people can talk to professionals, but activities and so on and so forth. So Ms. Fields, who is the chief of staff of OCME, she's very creative in terms of having different programs. The Department of Forensic Sciences, for example, took part of those funds and promoted like wellness, like massage chairs for everybody. And those are the type of things that may seem little, but they go a long way.
Absolutely. But in terms of the vicarious trauma programming, is that still in place and that we could expand upon, or?
I think it should be expanded. I think we should have more resources so we could have different programs throughout the years, wellness programs. And I'll give you some examples that I myself have participated. There are some like you do painting. There are some like, with plants, may appear, for somebody my age, it's kind of silly, but it helps. So it's having different programs throughout the years. And I think the employees and really appreciate when they do happen. They just need to be more robust, in my opinion.
Thank you. This is not a budget hearing, but as we are almost in the budget season, or we are in the budget season, what is on your mind in terms of what the agency needs to stabilize, improve, enhance your services and your outcomes?
I think, Madam Chairwoman, I think maintaining and increasing the budget, it is extremely important. The response, for example, to a mass fatality incident that happened where various district agencies participated, it was successful because we had the human resource to deal with it. And with human resource comes financial resources. The Office of the Medical Examiner, separate and apart from the core mission of certifying death, and performing postmortem examinations and toxicology. Also, as you stated earlier, had the fatality review committees. We have a data fusion center, and all those programs are of paramount importance. What the trend in the United States is, for example, to outsource toxicology because you save some money. But having it in-house has distinct advantages. And I can say this without hubris. I think our toxicology department is the best in the United States in terms of the instruments we have, in terms of the technical capability. It is expensive. So I say that to say, how did we respond to a mass fatality event without asking for a lot of external help? Because we already had the resources in place. So I think it's very easy to say, well, the medical examiner doesn't need that much money. You know, they deal with dead people. And then, no pun intended, then they cut the medical examiner just to skeletal crew. So I've seen it. I work in places like that. Then something happens and everybody's looking at each other. It's like, oh, maybe that was not such a great idea. So I used to work in a place that is 3 times as busier, 3 times the population, 1/3 of the budget. So we do have a good budget. I'm not going to tell you that we don't, but how do we maintain a degree of quality that is sustainable through the years? And, you know, you as the chairperson of the Judiciary Committee has a sympathetic ear for what we do. My hope in the next few years is we continue to have that support. Because as I said, it's a very difficult choreography. Like somebody dies, you don't want the family waiting 3 hours because there are no vehicles available, right? We don't have that. But things are getting complicated in terms, toxicology is complex. 30 years ago, the only substances to look for, with exceptions, was cocaine and heroin. Now, anybody with some chemistry knowledge can tinker in the garage and come up with something. Happens every day. And it's not that difficult. So how do you keep up? Every week you need to buy what is called a reference library, because the instruments do not know unless you tell them beforehand. But what's on the street? It's something that maybe a chemist aficionado just switch one molecule for another, and there is a new substance out there. And it is more common than one may appear. There are like 2,500 now substances that look like cannabis, but they're not quite, because somebody switched a molecule here and there. And it's like water. 2 molecules of hydrogen, 1 of oxygen. You put another molecule of oxygen, now you have hydrogen peroxide. It's kind of similar, but you don't want to drink it, but it's similar. And that's the complexity. So I don't want to see the medical examiner have a budget reduction because we need to save money. Because I think the medical examiner in the district went from a place that my predecessor, Dr. Mitchell, who was medical examiner from 2014 through 2021, took it to places and spaces of quality and accountability. And for example, last year, we were awarded the best medical legal death investigation agency in the United States. And, that doesn't come just because they like somebody at the medical examiner. That comes because of a level of commitment to quality. And, it requires funding. How do we know what's out there? If we have that data fusion center. Otherwise, you came to know that like a year later.
Right. And Dr. Diaz, one of the things that you all are tasked to do is a lot of these different review boards, different fatality review boards. And we asked about a number of them in writing to you beforehand, but one of them that I wanted to raise that I was most concerned about was the Child Fatality Review Committee. You all have a target that 80% of those cases be reviewed within 6 months of the notification of death, but that the actual for that was 0%.
Yes.
What is that about?
That's about gathering all the records. It takes time because it's an all-encompassing approach. It's not only the death that is reviewed, it's the social setting, the medical history. It takes time to review and to gather all that information. And then when the committee meets, each committee member has I wouldn't say a bias, but they concentrate on certain things. And I think part of the issue is that they're so passionate that it takes a long time to review a single case because they want every angle that is possible, not only the medical angle, but the social angle as well. So that's definitely an issue, but it goes with every fatality review committee.
But I imagine that contemplation was included when you came up with the target goal, right?
Yes.
So we're always going to need to do a full case file review. Like what would get us from 0% being done within 6 months to 80%?
Commitment from the committee members. They do an outstanding job, but they want a review that is so comprehensive that it takes time. If they have like an hour or 90 minutes to meet, sometimes they don't finish one case. So it requires that commitment. In my opinion, and I'm talking from the outside, not being a committee member myself, that's an achievable goal. And I don't want to push it to a year. I think that's an achievable goal. And I think that's the purview of hearings such as this one. You know, you put it in black and white. Why it is not coming to fruition? 6 months to me. But sometimes when you are, for example, when you are trying to certify a child death, sometimes it takes on average 3 months, sometimes exceeds. Our target is 90% of case completion in 90 days, but sometimes it requires more specialized studies, genetics that is coming up, and among other ones, cardiovascular, because we don't want to certify death and said unknown, undetermined. So, that's also, we will take part of the blame, but we don't want to expedite the process just to expedite it. It takes time to certify a child death.
Okay, thank you. Well, we can certainly discuss that with the review board and if it's more resources or time they need or more members, but that was a stark.
I think that's a great idea. Yes.
Well, thank you so much. That concludes my questions for you and your OCME hat. And as a reminder to the public, this technically was a public roundtable for the renomination. And anyone who has any written testimony they want to include for the record can be submitted to us until Wednesday, February 25th. We're now going to turn to the performance oversight hearings for the Department of Forensic Sciences and then the Deputy Mayor's Office for Public Safety and Justice. In order to switch from the roundtable to the oversight hearing, we just need to reload the Zoom. So we're going to technically adjourn and then we will reconvene in a minute. Thank you very much. The time is